it's just winning is how we paid it off.
Yeah.
Just making more money. She paid herself enough to live. I'm only getting, like, we do profit share. So
I think at that time you were working for free.
That's actually a great way, though, to get, partners and to build businesses. If you don't have money in the beginning and you want like a high level person, you start a business, like the best way to do it, it's hard to do, but the best way to do it is hire up top first. Instead of like being the top person and infilling underneath you, like hire somebody that's like upper level right from the get-go. And if you don't have the money, like give them equity. If they believe in that thing, now you have like a COO or a CEO, like right off the gate without having to pay anything.
Welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Show with Ryan Greenberg and Nick Kalfas.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Millionaire Show. We are here with Rhyan Gamet and Charlie Bell. How you guys doing?
Good.
All is well.
All right. Nick, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Sorry we're late. Mostly Nick's fault for not coming to help set up.
Busy day.
Tell us who you guys are. What business do you own? What other stuff are you doing in the investment space? Give us like a little elevator pitch.
So my name's Ryan. So we're with R&G Remodeling. We own a construction company. So we do a lot of projects for homeowners. We do additions, full gut renovations, some rental stuff, but not as much. We do our own flips, and we are also landlords. He has way more properties than I do, but working on it.
How'd you guys get to where you're at today? Did you guys start off as a partnership? Did you guys do your own thing and then form that partnership after a while?
Yeah, so I started off as an investor. I'm from a chemistry background, so my first rental property, I decided to do the renovation myself with my then partner. And during that whole process, couldn't find good contractors. They were like sleeping in the living room when they should be working, and it just didn't work out. So I kind of accidentally became a contractor.
What year was that?
This was in 2015. So I met him 2017, right?
I think it was 15 or
No,
16.
it wasn't 15.
16.
So we met eventually. So we had a mutual friend at the time, and this guy was like, hey, you got to call Charlie. He's got a bunch of rental properties. And at the time I was doing like 20 renovations by myself, like all by myself. And I was like, yeah, I'll call him. Blew him off for like 2 weeks. And this guy's like, you really got to call Charlie. Like, he really needs some work. He's got a ton of rental properties and could be good business. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll call him. Blew him off for like another week. And finally I called him. We met. He had just drank like a Red Bull or something before we met. So he was talking my ear off.
Super fast, yeah.
And I'm like, I got to sit down somewhere. It's just blah, blah, blah. Really good information though. And so he hired me for a drywall job. And that was it, a drywall job. He gave me money. He went to Iceland. He came back, and then he hired me to finish it. If you want the real nitty gritty, I was more of a paper contractor at the time. So I was getting the job, giving them to a contractor, and then managing the contractor.
But you said you were doing about 20 renovations at the time. Were they all your personal projects?
No, so people were hiring me,
okay.
And then I was hiring like a real GC because I wasn't licensed yet. And so over time, we were working together by then, and he was more of a consultant. So he was consulting me, and we realized that this guy was like kind of stealing money. And so ended up, once I confronted this other contractor, he walked. He was doing like 7 or 8 for me at the time. And then he had people, so kind of
How did you
saved the
find
day.
out that he was stealing money, and like how was he stealing?
Well, I can go over that. Give me a little background on me so we can catch up. My name is Charlie. No, I've been a real estate investor since 2002. I was in the mortgage business from 2001. So a good friend of mine that from college, he started buying rentals. He owned like 20 or 10 or so. And I was like, hey, I want to buy some. He started selling me some. I got up to 20 within a couple years. And then I kind of left the mortgage business I went part-time, and then I became a consultant around 2014, 15. And she was like one of my first clients. I hired her. I was doing flips too. I had my 20 rentals, and I had a couple flips going each year. And around 14, I read Art of the Deal. And I was like, why am I being my own GC on my own flips? I should be finding deals, not finding drywall and doing deals. So I was like, I'll hire a GC. I hired a contractor. A wholesale guy knew her, and I tracked her down, like, come on, let's go. Finally got in touch with her, and then hired her, went out of town. And then I was like, why don't you just do the rest? I got a good number from her. Prices were good. And then I mentioned, hey, I can consult your business. I'm a consultant.
That was his first and only client.
Yeah, first and only client. Because also like the mortgage business got kind of like cruddy. The Frank Dodd Act kind of killed it. You couldn't be a part-time loan officer anymore. You had to be like salaried. So they'd put you on a minimum wage, and then they're like, why didn't you do a loan? I'm like, I'm doing my investment career. Like I do loans whenever I want. So I just got tired of it. I left. I got into life insurance and all that too. But I was like, I'll consult you. So in consulting her, I found out how her business was structured. I asked her some, questions of how everything went. In the questionnaire, she mentioned, and she was a paper contractor. She would get a job, say, sell it to the client for 100, find a GC at 90, and then just make 10 managing the guy. Well, she mentioned she had one guy that was her most trusted guy, and he was doing 7. And me being like a very untrusting person, like, because of reality in life, I was like, well, red flag, like, who knows? And then like a month after I thought that, she said, something's funny. I gave him a lot of money, and now he wants a lot more. And I was like, why don't we do this? Let's go to each project. We'll make a list of a subjective number of the percentage of how far along a project is. You being a contractor, it's kind of subjective. And then the objective number of how much you've paid him. And it was overpaid. He's been overpaid, whatever, 110,000, whatever number. She confronted him. He quit. And it was like, oh, okay, what do I do now? So I'm like, no big deal. I know a lot of people. I'm older than you. I've been a landlord, I think at that time for 15 years. At that point when I met her. So I was like, this is my HVAC guy. This is a good, and
he was used to being broke, so he knew how to run jobs with no money.
Yes, being a landlord in Baltimore City for 15 years, how to run a marginal business. Marginal, that's the word, right? So it's very little.
Good word.
Yeah, good word. Fancy word for like very little profit. I was like, we can get through this. And I found out, what her situation was, that she had a bunch of credit cards not used. And there was all these guys I was referring. I was helping her negotiate to finish. Of course, as you know, as a contractor, to bring another contractor in, it's more expensive.
You gotta fix everybody else's mess,
Right.
and like
Yeah. So it ends up being like 130,000 really like behind. So I actually designed a software, quotation mark, air quotation marks, in Excel that split the labor and material. So we used the credit cards for the rest of the material and the remaining draws from the clients on the labor. Got through the whole situation. The clients got their products because, of course, if you back out, and you owe money, that's a very big problem. So they it got done. There was no face loss there. Of course, now she had a little bit of debt. And
a little.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Like, some credit card debt of over 130 to whatever thousand, of course. And then she's like, well, why don't we partner up? Because half the people now are your people.
Assume half my debt.
Yeah, not gonna
Yeah, right. He didn't.
I didn't, but we got together, and I think she was doing $1 million in sales that year. And the next year, after us partnering and using, a bunch of my people and her people, we did like 2.3 in sales the next year. And then it's just gone up each year after that.
How did you bounce back from that $100,000 plus loss?
I mean, I just called my parents and I was like, listen, like, this is the situation. I mean, I was really at that time 26. So, and I'd never been in like business. I mean, I'm from a science background, corporate America. And I basically was like, I'm either going to like file bankruptcy and just like, cover that up and just go back to corporate America, or like he helped me work through the whole thing. So I basically didn't pay myself for like a year and a half.
So were you working your corporporate job then? Or
No.
Oh yeah.
It was just this.
So you just got to hustle.
She's renting a room. She had a car. Now it was, on the
My
list of her
asset was
assets.
one dog.
Yeah, and a dog. So it's just winning is how we paid it off.
Yeah.
Just making more money. She paid herself enough to live. I'm only getting, like, we do profit share. So
I think at that time you were working for free.
Well, I think the whole first year, that was kind of the joke. That's why we partnered, because she's like, well, I can't pay you. Like, I have no money. The guy stole all my money.
But that's actually a great way, though, to get partners and to build businesses. If you don't have money in the beginning and you want like a high level person, because we interviewed, that was one of the things they took away from when we went to Maui and interviewed Brandon Turner. He was saying, like, when you start a business, like, the best way to do it, it's hard to do, but the best way to do it is hire up top first, instead of like being the top person and infilling underneath you. Like, hire somebody that's like upper level right from the get-go. And if you don't have the money, like, give them equity. If they believe in that thing, now you have like a COO or a CEO, like, right off the gate without having to pay anything. But you give up equity, but like, 0% of zero is
Yeah, so
is
he
nothing.
got like negative equity for like a year and a half or so.
Right.
But you believed in the vision.
Absolutely. I mean, like, she's awesome, and she does really well what she does, and I gave what I do well, like the estimating and all that kind of, and also the problem solving. And I've owned property for 15 years in Baltimore City. And it was like, what do we do here? This is what you do. It's just, I was just like the consultant on every other issue that come along. So we were able. I'm like, okay. And I've just left the mortgage business. I not like I didn't have a job. I was selling life insurance whenever I felt like it. I had 35 properties at the time, I think. So I had enough to pay my bills. And I was like, if we built this thing, like you said, like you're investing the time to build it up to give something of value instead of like starting as an employee somewhere. So like I didn't want to go back to being an employee after leaving the mortgage, job, even though it was kind of part-time. So I don't like work for anybody anymore. I'm my own business.
Just
and
me.
Well, yeah, we, partners,
So, how did you both determine the right time to quit your job and start and going into real estate full time? Because I know a lot of people, a lot of the listeners, a lot of people that are wanting to get into real estate, and maybe they're getting into it full time. They don't know when is that breaking point to break off from their current job.
I think it's different for everybody. So for me personally, I just like jumped and hoped that I would land somewhere, and I did. I think it, but I'm a contractor, so it's different. I'm not going to preach about being a contractor because it's not all glory. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if people are just being like investors or, more passive investors and passive in the real estate industry, like you can do that, I guess when you reach a certain, he probably knows more than I.
I feel like there's a fallacy with that because you can't just like, unless you have a bunch of money legitimately, it's very hard to just jump into passive real estate investing
Exactly.
and replace your income. It's really like, I don't even want to say it's possible because you really need a high,
Yeah.
like you either need to be like super involved with and doing all this stuff yourself, fixing toilets, doing all that stuff, and just keep it small and be the operator. Or
But then you're the contractor too. So
Right,
it's kind of one
right.
of those like,
I don't believe I feel like all the gurus online say like, oh yeah, just buy these properties, replace your income, and then quit your job and you'll travel to Bali. But like that's not like, everybody asks me like, oh my God, you're killing it in real estate. I'm like,
You work.
90% of my business, though, my money comes from contracting. Like it doesn't come from my real estate. My real estate is like a good retirement money, but like that's not the bulk of the money. It's all from a job that I have. Like,
and it's a job.
it's
It
a job.
is a job, and that's a great point. I agree completely. And to your question of when do you quit? I mean, I think it's an issue of when do you do something different so it allows you to do more real estate. Because what I did, I had the opportunity to go from a full-time mortgage job, like I was a manager of a finance company, and then I was like, okay, I used to be a loan officer, so I'll just be a loan officer at a shop part-time. But then that industry kind of sucked, so I became like a life insurance agent, which is I call people, I go to their house, I set my own schedule. Then it allowed me to be a full operator of my rental portfolio I've been building. But then you learn how to do everything, collect money. You're like a part attorney. Like you need to learn law, you need contracts. Like you become a contractor. If you're going to make money as a landlord, you have to do everything. That's the thing. If you have small stuff in the beginning. So I think the question is, what's like we call it a side hustle. What side hustle can you do to make a little bit of money just to even out the money you're not making from your rental? And here's another crazy thing. Once I partnered with Ryan, and remember, I had enough properties to live. I had this little side thing going on too. Once I partnered with her and I was making enough money to pay my bills again, all my money that the rental portfolio was making could stay in the portfolio. So that money could grow on itself. And that's the mistake a lot of young investors do. They go,
Trying to pay themselves with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they try to start paying themselves. And it's like, I mean, I remember I used to live in Canton. I moved there in, 02, and I had 2 check cards and, a couple of properties, and I was selling and it's spending money like crazy. Like if you leave the money in the company, and this is any company, not just a rental portfolio or company or business. If it's in the company, it can grow faster. And then you will get to the point one day, to whatever that number is in your mind that you're making enough, a true net.
Well, that's
a true net
I
on the
was just
I
gonna
think we
bring
were
that
talking
up.
about
Yeah.
that before this
Like
too.
do a 5. I would say to people, like, if you have properties for 5 years, do a 5-year profit study. Look at all of your properties. And the other problem that we didn't have in the beginning, and we're just now like finally like comfortable with it, is having really clean books. Because if you like really did property by property over 5 years, I bet you'd be astonished with how much you're not making and how much you thought you were making. But if you do it for 6 months and you don't have a furnace go out, or you don't have a roof that goes bad, then you don't really know if you're making money or not, because that $500 a month profit after your PITI is not $500. Like it's not. It's $100, or it's less than that, or it's negative.
In 2008, well, I was in the mortgage business. Like, I went part-time at a certain point, but I was in that crash. Like, I mean, my income went from 140 in 2008, 27 year, whatever, nice income back then, to like 35 working the same time. And I was like, well, I got 20 properties. It'll all work out. And then I realized how very little the properties made. Okay. Because then when you had to rely on them to live, you're like, oh, geez, like this one made, 400 this year, like after I paid the roof and whatever. So the books are very key. You got to know for sure. And this is any investing. Like what separates the rich and the poor is the rich buy assets that pay them. So if you buy a rental that doesn't pay you any money, you're still poor.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. You're getting poorer.
You're getting poorer.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, well, I got that equity. Yeah, well, the equity you can only get when you sell it. So that's a different form of investing, not a passive investment. So, but that was a big eye opener. I was like, whoa, okay. And then I really started saving more. I'm like, I'm not going to pay the roofing company $4,500. I'm going to find the guy that does the roofing and hire him. And I'm going to, as the landowner or the landlord, I can hire a guy directly, do the work. And then I do a roof for $2,000. So you have to do that. You cannot pay retail if you're a landlord.
Sure. And yeah, owning rental property is definitely a long-term play. I feel like, as I grew my portfolio over the last 6 years, you always need some sort of active income, and that has to help to support, whether it's flipping properties, or for me, I have the landscaping business, just creating that active income. I feel like the more properties I buy, the more active income I need or want.
I think that the active income is something that all the people that are like touting things on Instagram and everything, like they don't talk about the money that they're making from whether it's social media or whatever, and then they're buying properties with it. I feel like people do a bad job of really explaining how they're making their money. They're like, oh, I have 10 Airbnbs, and like, okay, great, but to operate 10 Airbnbs, like you need a full-time person, or you are a slave to those properties. Like it's not passive whatsoever. And I feel like it's like such false advertising. All these people that are like, oh no, we make $1 million a year on our rental properties, and like each one is making $500 a month. Like
they're also like selling coaching programs and education.
If your rentals are going so
and,
good, then why do the other things?
And it's also your acquisition process. So how I bought 20 or maybe even got up to 35 was I was selling loans. I was refinancing homes, making over $100,000, and I go to a bank. Yeah, they see my properties, but they see what they really make, and banks take 75% of the rent. So with your actual loss, it could be even more according to the bank. So that W-2 income showed them, okay, he makes money. Great. All right, cool. We'll give him the loan. So if I was like, I'm quitting, I'm not doing anything, I never would have got to I actually ended up getting to 50 at one point, but I never would have got there if I was not earning income. Like
the more I learn and the more houses I do for other people, the less rentals I want. Like literally, I'm like so not excited to buy more rentals. And usually this time of year is when we try to buy stuff to like feed the machine through the winter. And we look at these like the projected cash flows, and I'm just like, God, I could really be investing in like a CD right now and making, less, but it's guaranteed, it's liquidable, it's there. And for me to like buy a rental and make less than 10% cash on cash return, like it literally just doesn't make sense anymore.
It's definitely also, there's the other side things of the rental. It's the tax shelter, the tax benefits you get. I think one year I made when I was like 25, I had 10 properties and I made $110,000 selling mortgages, and, commission sales, they tax higher because like 1 month is high and they take like 50%, but I had 10 properties. I ended up only paying like $10,000 in tax that year, like state and federal. So I was like, oh, there's something to this. So, you know what I mean? Like that, if you don't count that, Like, yes, you're right. It totally does not make sense.
But you have to also, for that to make sense, you have to be making a bunch of money too.
Right.
Somewhere else.
Right.
To,
absolutely. I actually had a lot of carryover loss because if you make over 100, you can only take 75% of your loss. If you make over 150, you can only take 50% of your loss at that time. Now they change this stuff all the time. I'm not a CPA, so, but when you go to sell, it actually it comes back as income. So then you get into like transfers, and I've recently done one of those, a 1031 exchange, not transfer. So, but you're doing okay. It's get rich slow. I always think of these good book ideas. Like I'm like, I want to write this one. I'm not a writer. I'm like, I'm going to write this book one day. Get rich slow. I mean, it's what it is. It's not a scheme. It's real. You're a lord of a land. Like, this is America. You don't have to be born to somebody to go buy a piece of property, and you are the Lord. Now you have all the responsibilities. The water bill. The taxes. The furnace broke. All the license. So it's not nothing. You have to be on point and learn.
So how have you guys in your contracting business, like, have you guys had to adapt and change now that the rates are up? Are you doing like the same amount of investor work that you were last year, the same amount of homeowner work? Like, what does that kind of look like for you guys?
I think right now it's a good mix of the two. I mean, I think, investors, it ebbs and flows. I feel like when there's a ton of investors in the market, the homeowners the work dies down. And then when the investors die down, the homeowner work goes up. So I would say it's a good mix right now, like 50-50.
And what is, like, are you doing any kind of marketing specifically to target these different, like, investors versus homeowners? You're targeting kitchens, or is there anything that you're doing, like, specifically, or you just
not
word
really
of mouth?
It's mostly word of mouth. I mean, I would say this is the first year we've actually paid for any marketing. Up until this year, it's all just been word of mouth. So we try to target as many investors as we can, but the homeowners, we can't deny them either. So.
Yeah, we noticed in the beginning when we were basically all word of mouth, I was getting like all the jobs. I would get probably 90% of the bids that I would get. And then when we started marketing, we started putting ourselves out there more on like the Facebook groups and whatever else. Now I'm getting like 50% of the jobs. And you could definitely tell the difference between somebody that just calls you off of a marketing thing versus somebody that's like, hey, you did my friend's bathroom and I'd like you to do mine. And that to me has been really frustrating, because now I feel like I'm not knowing but bidding against a bunch of like one-man bands with a truck that I come in at 70 and they're like, oh, my other contractor said they do it for 35. And I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know there was another contractor, but go ahead with him for 35. Like,
we quoted somebody recently it was a homeowner job, but it was like a full renovation. And it was like in the twos, and he's like, well, I have this other contractor at like 130, and I'm like, good luck. Let me know like when he doesn't finish and you need some help. But sometimes they're also not comparing apples to apples. Like you might be doing something that they're not, and
that's exactly what we were talking about before.
That.
If there's no contract in place that says what they're going to do, and he says I'll do it for 135, well, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Because I'm going to write everything that I'm doing on a document so you see exactly what I'm doing.
And then you're going to sign it.
Yeah, if you don't have that from them, how do you know that he's just not going to do it? How is he going to do anything? Like that to me has been kind of a not a struggle, but it's definitely just annoying. Like working with new people or new clients to us that are just like so out of touch with what real pricing is. So we started recently, I don't know how you guys do this, but like if somebody calls you and they're potentially going to buy a flip, do you go out there and estimate it if it's not owned or under contract?
We don't. We do, but we charge a fee for it.
Same. What do you guys charge?
$250.
I just
You're
raised
300.
ours to
I saw
300.
it. I saw that on
I was
Facebook.
250.
I think we're going to raise it to 350 now.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I don't even, like, I'm doing one on Friday, and like I'm so not excited to do it because it takes a couple hours of your day.
Yeah.
You're talking to somebody that probably doesn't really know what they're doing for the most part. And then I sit here and I write it all out, and it's like, great, I made $300, but
we literally just talked about this the other day. Like, it's not really just 1 hour. It's like 4 hours of your time.
If
by
you're
the time
really estimating a job, if you're truly estimating a job, you need a couple of, like, at least 3 hours of like sitting in front of a computer, having measurements out. Like I use Polycam now. Have you guys used that? No. Oh, I'm going to change your life after this podcast and show you. It is the coolest thing. You scan a room with your phone and it gives you a 3D model and perfect blueprints.
Oh,
just
pretty
using
cool.
the LiDAR in your phone. That saved me so much time.
I use
estimating.
a laser, but that seems faster.
So this is like using LiDAR, and then I have a laser that I just double check like the gross measurements, like the house is actually like 40, and it's within a couple of inches accurate, and it saves it. And it's really, I'll have to show it to you after. It's pretty sweet. So how many houses are you guys doing for yourself right now?
Well, I'm actually doing flipping 3 of my rentals right now, and we are doing 2 and about to do our 3rd flip right now. We're about to close on one next week. So
Plus the triplex.
oh well, yeah, the triplex we're renovating. So probably, I mean, together like 7 total. I mean,
But bulk of your work you're doing for other people.
well, oh yeah, absolutely. We do each year. Last year we did like 55 flips for clients. Yeah, and like
And then
how many
on top of
different
that is
clients?
homeowners.
another 30 contracts.
How many different clients do you guys have for those 55 flips that you did for them last year?
Well, so for the flips, I would say probably half were new and half were like our repeat people. And then on top of that, we had the homeowners, which,
Which do you prefer, the homeowner work or the investor work?
depends on the day you ask. I mean, lately, I would say, I started as investor only, and I like that business model because it's like no emotion involved in it.
But then it's a volume play.
But so we're more of a volume play type of thing.
That's Tyler and I differ in the sense that like I would never really send him to like a homeowner operation at all. He loves the investor stuff, but the homeowner stuff, like it takes a different type of person to deal with that and do that project. But with that being said, the profits are 3 times as much.
Yes, and they're higher. And there's something you mentioned earlier about like comparing apples to apples and being frustrated with. This is where salespeople come in. Like I used to sell, like when the mortgage crash hit, I didn't sit around and, oh, darn, I can't make money doing mortgages. So I actually sold windows and siding and roofing. I did a lot of other things too, but that was one of the things I did. And that actually gives that buffer between the owner of the business and the homeowner, like kind of saying, well, why is this much more? And they, but they're driven by that commission, so where like we are sitting there going, we're doing like 30 projects and this one person has this one issue and I don't have time to call them back. That salesperson is sitting there going, I better call them back because I don't want to lose my commission. Like if they like cancel or whatever. So that's the problem, because there needs to be that other type of person like there.
Do you
Of course,
guys
they
have
eat up the profit.
any salespeople like that, or is it just you two?
It's just us two. And what's funny is you talk about your partner, Tyler, and how he won't go to the homeowners. And I guess you're more of the homeowner. So he's our homeowner person. And I'm not a fluffy...
She's very
direct.
She's very direct.
Do you guys have contractors that do the investor work that you feel uncomfortable with sending them to a homeowner?
We do
property?
have some of our workers that we're like, we're not using them.
We have
Yeah,
guys,
some are
not to be
special.
gross, but we've had guys that have like literally shit in garbage bags on job sites. I'm
We've
like,
had that.
"Yeah, we're not going to send you to the $75,000 kitchen that we're
Yeah,
doing.
we've
Like,
had people in buckets, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's like,
or
cool.
like
or bottles of
or like
pee.
Oh,
just
yes.
sitting all over
Yes.
the job
Yeah,
site.
like there's 3 bathrooms in the house at work. Or like using the toilet, like or a trash can instead of flushing this.
So
Other cultures.
The punch out guy.
No, I would say we have our main people. I would say in terms of like keeping up with the volume is HVAC.
I agree.
HVAC.
Yeah.
Because
So
the
we-
HVAC guys do
Yeah,
their own stuff.
They do their own stuff. Like we're in house for everything, but when it comes to HVAC, like we just brought on another HVAC guy, and it's like, okay, maybe he can, like, now we can, like, instead of feeding everything to one person and things get delayed, now we can diversify, like, different things.
Is that when you're doing like full duct work?
Not all. Sometimes it's just rerouting different things or just sending him to do an exhaust fan, but it's down in Annapolis, and I just need him to do one exhaust fan, and he happens to live down there. So I would say HVAC is the one. Everybody else we're pretty good with keeping. And
For us, it's finishers. Like finishers are just so hard because they're so like they're
finishers
just,
like drywall.
just like like I guess punch out finishers. Like I call them finishers. Like the guys that go in at the end and will spackle little things and paint and just ready like the blue tape.
Blue
Guys.
tape. Yep. We do
Those
blue tape.
guys for us are just so difficult because we only have or can trust a very few select people to actually go and get it done without us going there 5 or 6 times and walking them through it, putting tape on the wall, all that stuff. That's been a struggle for us. And you mentioned HVAC. For us, we just sub all that stuff out. We were talking at that event the other day where like you guys are probably doing it for like $1,000. I think we figured out like $1,000 less than I am. But I never had problem with volume because I have 3 companies that all matched the same price. I was like, if you want my business, this is the price that we're going to do it for. And if you want it, to go ahead and do it. And that's been nice to not have to because you guys buy the material for them too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
maybe not like all the time now. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So that's
were
one thing I
heavy
don't
in
want to worry
finishers.
about. I don't even want to think about the tradespeople.
With her starting, really, her like that first year she was doing 20 rehabs. They're all investors, right?
Yeah,
maybe,
they were all
maybe
flippers.
one homeowner, but so we were and with me merging with her and helping her, we were finisher heavy. And we call a finisher like drywall, paint, cabinetry, flooring.
All the way to the end.
All the way to the end.
Okay.
And they do blue tape. We hold back a certain amount of money for the blue tape and all that. So we had, at one point, 6 finishers, like 6 different guys that had their own crews. And of course, you cut the fat over the years. Like, one guy's, he's not as good as this other guy and he's a pain to deal with. Okay, we'll call you if we need you. And then you get down to like 2 and then you're like, now we need more, so you go back and forth. And there's some personality differences there. So, but that's when that's why it's been better for us, because in the flip world, sometimes they're not even doing anything with the MEP. They're like, maybe adding 1 bathroom and then just making it nice.
Do you guys do pin lists for realtors?
We do.
Those are fun, right?
They're great.
Yeah.
Especially when you get the one that's like, well, it shouldn't be this way, but consult with a contractor, and it's like, no, this is okay. It's fine.
I've done a couple of them when I look at like, if I take into consideration how much time I spent reading this thing and the inspection, it's like, okay, I made $17. Awesome. Like,
yeah.
I took 5 hours of my life reading this inspection, calling 4 different contractors that all are going to have to charge me like $100 to look at a pipe that's coming out of a roof. I hate those.
That's probably one of the biggest value adds we have for our clients that we don't like sell or don't talk about. And it's only for clients that know. Like, if you flipped enough, you get that list and it says consult, it's like 12 things and 3 of the things are talk to a plumber, talk to an electrician, talk to HVAC. We have all that in-house. We've already did all the work. If we didn't do the work, we'll just do the stuff that belong with our things and just bill them for what's left. But it's a great thing for flippers.
It's a good thing too. What I've noticed that for us, it has brought in other jobs. Like we did pin list at somebody's house that they were selling. Now I'm doing a high-end bathroom at the house that they bought. So like that is okay. But it's when you work with a couple of brokerages and then they're like, oh, he's a contractor, he'll do it. And then all of their agents are now hitting you up for pin lists, and you're like, God damn, this is fucking time consuming.
Oh yeah.
And very unprofitable.
Yeah.
Can't you just charge accordingly then in that scenario?
Yeah, but the realtors, nobody wants to pay. That's the problem. Like the pin lists are like the things that nobody wants to pay for.
That's going to get it past the finish line. So
that's
They still don't want to pay.
Yeah, they still don't want to pay. Like any reasonable person would say, yeah, of course, that's what's going to finish and get the house sold. But when you send them a bill for $200, they're like, it's $200? Like
then they negotiate, and it's like the work is done.
Right.
Like pay up.
Yeah, this is a billing situation. Like you're being billed.
Then they call, can you just write me a letter? Like I had my other guy do it. Can you just write me a letter for the work? Like, so you basically made me look at your thing for 3 hours and tell you the price was this. And then you hired some other guy to do it for cheaper, but he didn't have a license. So now you're asking me to write my license number on your, like, no, sorry. Like, you better tell your other guy to go get a license.
Yeah.
Like, quick.
We don't do that either.
Yeah.
Can you guys talk a little bit about how each of you bought your first rental property and what that looked like?
You want me to go first?
You're older.
Okay. Yeah, it happened earlier in history. I started the mortgage business after 1 year. Right around the same time, a guy I went to school with, I went to Frostburg State. He was in my fraternity. He graduated a year before me, but he started buying rental properties. So I was kind of like, hey, I want to get it. Let's be partners. And he's like, no, never be a partner. Just have your own stuff. Okay. And we both bought that no money down Carlton sheet system back in the 90s. Okay. It was like $300, but I was like, oh man, that was a lot of money back then. So it taught you how to buy property with no money down. But eventually he got in his head, okay, I'll sell you some. So I bought my first property, actually two at the same time, in Morrill Park, one on Janice Avenue, one on Norland. Still have those. And I bought them at this, after working for a year. W-2 income, you need, when you're buying stuff, they got to prove you. I just bought a house in Canton, Brewers Hill, Canton, whatever. So I had that under my belt. I was a homeowner, so that's important for everyone out there. Show the bank that you can buy, you have stuff. Okay. And then I bought my first one. And since he was a friend and an investor already, they were both Section 8. They're already rehabbed, not really, but they were rental ready. There's someone living in there. And then of course later things like start breaking, you start blaming your buddy. And really that's just how it works. Things break. But he actually ended up selling me my first 10.
And this was, so for the listeners too, this was before DSCR was a thing.
But yes.
Getting loans was way more difficult.
Big time.
Even in 2016,
that just started,
it was
four years ago about?
I think it was
4 or
2018 or 2018.
Yeah, these were 80% or 20% down or 25% down deals. So,
yeah.
Of course, they were only $65,000, fully rehabbed or rented already. But I had to come up with the money. I was selling mortgages. My mortgage payment on my personal house was like $1,100. I rented out one of the rooms to a buddy for $600. So my spend was low. I made commission checks, like pretty good commission checks, because I had that kind of job. Highly suggest sales to anybody that's trying to be in real estate, because you can make a lot of money by working hard and take that money and put it into something else. Don't buy liabilities. Just don't buy cars and, go out too much, save your money. And I used the money I saved to buy property. Now, the way I did it, I would use the same money over and over again. Now, that's a complicated thing for another show. But that took time. It's like get the house, refi it out later and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this is normal. My rates were like 7.5, 7.8. And I was like, oh, this is a good one, back then. And HARP came along after 08 crash, and I refied all those down to 4.5. So that helped. Rates are temporary, so don't concentrate too much on that. It's got to make money when the rates are high, though. You got to keep that in mind.
That's I think, the biggest struggle right now. All right. So, Ryan.
So I got mine. This is before I was partners with him. I was a wholesaler.
Ooh, that's another business I failed at miserably.
I failed too, so it's okay. I didn't like to talk to people. I didn't like to talk on the phone.
I didn't even get to talk to people. That was my trouble.
Yeah, so the yellow letters and the postcards. So I'm pretty sure somebody called from one of those postcards, and the partner that I had at the time, she did all the negotiation, and I don't know. We basically just bought it as a rental, but we had just a rich guy with money, and he lent on it, and he lent money for the rehab, and we did the work ourselves. That was my first rental. And then when it was time to refi, because we only had his money for so long, we sold it because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, okay, we're going to sell this and move on. And then I became a contractor.
Nice. So when you sold it, you didn't know about like the refi process and getting the money back, tax-free, all that stuff? You just didn't know?
No idea.
And how's so you did that one, and then you started contracting. How did you bridge the gap with your education in real estate to then start to really learn oh, I did that wrong. I should have probably refinanced and kept it. What did you do to educate yourself?
I met this guy, Charlie.
Oh, okay. So that's where Charlie comes in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he is even with our current deals now, he's the finance guy. I'm more of the logistics person. So CEO, COO.
Yeah. That's a good, I feel like with partnerships in the beginning with ours, the biggest thing, and it sounds like you guys didn't have this problem, but in the beginning, we didn't have all that much business. So we were stuck kind of doing the same things, the same job a lot of the times where and we were also full-time teachers for a long time, up until a few years ago. So we would get off of school and both meet at a project just to fight about it, because we were this is the right vanity. No, this is the right vanity. And we had this one day where we were we had a flip we had 3 bathrooms, and we bought the wrong vanity twice, 3 wrong vanities. They were stubbed up through the floor and not through the wall. We were God damn, we spent 5 hours fighting about vanities, just 6-7 years ago. But we were stuck, we couldn't figure out how to separate our jobs. And once we figured that out, then we could scale and we weren't fighting as much. But in the beginning, it's very hard because there's only so much that you have. It's only the two of us and then a couple of guys that are in the field. So have you guys had issues and what issues, if you've had issues as like partners, since you started your business together?
I would say like figuring out the roles, it's only recently that we've figured out he's going to be more of the point of contact for homeowners and I'll be more the investors. I mean, that happened a couple months ago. So up until that point, it was just kind of like me divvying up everything. I would say the things that we argue about now is like he'll give me a budget for something of like, let's say a vanity for 200 and I want to spend 350 and he's like, no. And I'm like, but it's going to look really pretty. So I would say like we argue more about that kind of stuff. And me always trying to go over budget and him trying to rein me back in.
So is that for like homeowner stuff or investor stuff as far as like picking out a vanity?
More so investors. Homeowners, they pick out their own stuff. I mean, we let investors pick out their own stuff too, but some of them don't want to. But it's more so for our flips and our stuff. I'm always, trying to put a diamond in like a rough thing. And he's like, no, don't.
Someone's going to buy the house.
Someone's going to steal the diamond and whatever.
Yeah, we've definitely learned just put the white or gray, whatever it is, just put it in there. Like that's not really the thing that's going to make the huge difference. Like, does it have new cabinets or does it have old brown ones? Like as long as they're new, like whether they're 36 or 42s, that was a big freaking argument with us. Like he wanted to put 42 wall cabinets in all these houses that we're doing. I'm like, we're spending like, he's like, it's only a couple $100 more. I'm like, yeah, but times that by like 150 kitchens and it's a lot of money. And nobody comes in here and like with 36-inch wall cabinets, like, damn, I would buy this house if it had 42s, but it doesn't. So I can't buy this house. Like that's not a thing. Like people don't care.
They don't. I had 42-inch cabinets before I moved into the house now. I never use the top. I'm 6 foot. I never use the top shelf.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I can never reach it anyway.
So when I did my kitchen, I made sure to do like 36 because I was like, I can reach that.
There's, I think one of the big things that I always tell, like, especially new investors, I'm like, don't think about this as your house. It's not your house. You don't have to live here. Your wife doesn't have to like this. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the biggest mistake I see is people are over renovating. They're buying a $65,000 shit box in Edmondson Village and then trying to put a $550 vanity in. It's like, that is not, don't do that.
It's not needed. I don't know how many times at the table, because when I was younger, I'd want to go to the closing table. Now I really don't, for a lot of reasons. But I remember sitting and the few things or the one thing I was super stressed about on the flip, like, oh, I'm going to do this. No, change it, rip it out, do it again. And then I get to the table, and the one thing I was the most proud of, the people that were buying the house would say, we love it. We can't wait to change that one thing, that I stressed about. And then I realized, yes, people are the same, but people are unique at the same time, so stop trying to think for them and know your market. Yes, you might have grew up in some nice area in Bethesda or something, and you think look at the comps, not just for the numbers, right? And the days on market, but what did they do? Like, did they even finish the basement? Like we talk one client out of like, just don't do it this time. She's like, okay. She's like,
but she's one that over improves, but for the most part, she usually makes her money back.
Oh yeah, she does great.
She does great.
But she sold that house in like 2 days with no basement finished. I mean, she still she cleaned it and made her look really nice. I mean, unfinished, really nice. But if she would have finished that, it would have been $60,000 less or $40,000 less, whatever, in her pocket. But she still sold it. People buy new homes, new construction homes all the time, no finished basement. Yeah. And at a flipper, if they're really a full flipper, full gut, do everything, we're in competition with builders. Because the people buying your house are either going to buy a new construction or your house. They don't want to buy grandma's house that they have to do any work. But nobody wants to do any work anymore.
I mean, you go to these Ryan Homes communities. Ironically, we're both Ryan, but you go to these Ryan Homes communities, and they put shitty bathrooms in. They give you 1 or 2 options for tile, and they put in those stupid inserts for bathrooms, and they'll literally frame in the shower just so they can stick this insert in there. And people are still scooping up those houses like crazy. They just hire us.
Have you walked into their model, any of their model units with Ryan Homes?
Not with Ryan Homes, but I recently was in one for Lennar.
Okay.
And those are a little nicer than Ryan Homes, but it's the same shit, basically.
So we were bidding on a townhouse development. I think it was like 184 townhouses like years ago. And, we weren't licensed builders at the time. We are now. But, we were like, we need to go and see what a spec Ryan home is. So we pretended to go and we're buying a house,
homeowners,
super awkward. Like, we're going to buy a house. Yay. And,
like
we walked
fake
through
husband,
pretty much.
Yeah. Had to. I mean, the realtor's giving us her time.
Yeah.
Right?
She's I was like, yeah.
We wanted all the options. We wanted to go through the whole thing, let's do this.
And
that's actually a great idea.
It is a good idea. And we got their price sheet. We figured out, okay, this is what they put in their houses. They put nothing in.
No.
And we went from our basic, builder grade laminate countertops, carpet everywhere, laminate flooring, no fixtures anywhere, no recessed lights. You don't get anything. And we went from 250, and then we did basic, give me a couple lights, give me your basic granite, no backsplash type of stuff, to $350,000.
In the little townhouse.
Where did the money go? It's crazy what you get for those. And they get put up in
They are very fast. That's what, it's hard to compete with that. Like the fact that they can put up these, I just did a bunch of bathrooms in, I forget the name of it, but it's literally right up here, a really nice townhome community. And I was doing a bathroom, and I think I did a bathroom, a backsplash, and an office where I hung some cabinets in an office or something. By the time I did that project, they had put up 45 homes. In the 2 weeks, every day I come back, there's a new structure that's erected. I'm like, how the hell are they doing this fast? But they have stocks of machinery and everything that's there. It's it's impossible to compete with those.
I mean, they've got
people.
a system. Their system is
right.
Fast and cheap.
Yeah, and they really just don't. The big thing is they don't really give you options. They just have all the stuff stocked in warehouses.
You get 3 options,
right,
and that's it. Yeah. You don't. If you want to deviate, you got to sell and then hire somebody else to come in and do it.
Oh yeah, remember the model home, the backsplash tile? That wasn't even an option.
No.
It was just oh, that's there, but you can't get that. It's okay, wow.
So how much time do you guys spend dealing with investors as far as picking out and giving them options? Or are a lot of the investors that you work with frequently, do they choose the same stuff for all of their flips or rentals?
So I would say, a lot of people choose the same thing. A lot of people ask for our input, and I'll say, this is what everybody's doing. A lot of people want to do what everybody else is already doing. We don't really handhold them in that process. We have a spreadsheet that we send them, which is part of the contract. And I say, follow the draw schedule, and as I'm ready for them, put the link on there, and we'll order it or go pick it up or have it delivered. So there's not too much hand holding, but sometimes there's hand holding oh, you can't use that. Your plumbing's, like you said, coming out of the floor, or it's coming out of the wall, you need to get this, or your toilet needs to be a 10-inch, not a 12-inch. So there's not really that much hand holding. People are pretty much doing the same.
And we buy it. We don't want them to get it to the site.
Yeah,
they will not do it right.
No,
and I
absolutely.
know you mentioned when you first started out that you were kind of hiring a GC and then, having them and just managing the job. How have you evolved over those years? And then when you guys formed the partnership, what does that look like now? Do you guys hire a contractor who has his own crew? Do you guys have employees on payroll?
That's a great question, because that was part of my when I was consulting her and how we changed to make sure nothing ever she didn't get in the same situation she was in before. So now we buy all the material ourselves, so we control that money. Another thing she was doing with the 20 projects, she was actually going and meeting the bank for the investor. So she would start working with no money in the bank and meet the bank for the investor. And I was like, wait a minute. The investor's not putting any money up, so he's not investing anything. He's not investing his time. You're doing all for it. You're doing way too much. So now, we do get a deposit to start. We use that money, and then, we help them set up their draws to help them. Sometimes they don't know how to do it right. But we're controlling all the money. Also, we don't pay our people, and they're all in-house people. So they're not we're not hiring somebody else. They're working for us. We're all right, go here now. And we don't pay them until they do the work. We're not putting a deposit down on our one guy to go paint. We're Sherwin-Williams will deliver, whomever will deliver the paint. And when maybe after a week of how much you've done, we'll give you some of the money we already agreed to about on your portion. So what this does is it protects the client's money. And that seems kind of funny, but that's actually if you look up the legal, ramifications of being a general contractor, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the client's money. Yeah. I was like, I'm glad I didn't stutter. No, I was kidding. No, but it's like, okay, so what happens when contractors fail? Like, it's like, well, they pay their guys, and then they bounce, and like, oh, his wife died or whatever, he went back to wherever, and then you got to go back to the client or come out of your pocket to fix it. We protect the client that way. We've even had a client one time, we got started, we fixed his roof, did the roof. The job was just going to be crazy because of like the how bad the framing was in the house. And he's like, I can't finish this. I need a GC it myself. So we said, okay, we've done this much work. You've paid us 30 or whatever it was. And we broke the contract and gave him back to whatever we haven't spent. There you go. Cause we have it. We haven't spent it. We spent it on the framing and the labor, and we were ready for another 11. I think we gave him 11 back. We were ready to pay that for something else, but he just had the GC himself to save the money. He was an investor.
He's almost done with that house.
Maybe he should
A
have
couple
used
years
us.
later.
It's been a while. Good luck,
Yeah.
Mike. No.
Just putting him on blast. I think when you're trying to GC it yourself, I tell people this all the time. I'm like, for one, like, you're not going to get my discounts. Like, I try to sell people on the idea, like, especially with property management too. Like, you can manage it, but when you call Len the plumber and he charges you $1,800 for a snake, and I was going to charge you $550 and I was still going to make my money, like, I'm getting it way less than retail. I'm passing those discounts along to you because I just want to make my margin. Once I charge you my margin, it's pretty much going to be either retail or less than what Len the plumber or whoever, big plumbing company or whatever is going to charge you. For GCing yourself, if you have a job, if you're busy, if you have kids, and it's not the job that you want to be doing, like, as an investor, it sucks.
No, it's
Like,
not. Being a landlord from 02, I mean, I bought my first house in 01, but that was my house. But being a landlord since 02, I was real hands-on. I'm doing everything. I was a loan officer. I worked from like 10 to 8, but you're not calling all day. So it gave me a lot of time to like do this stuff. And in 2014, I needed to move. We were ready to move back to the county where I'm from, Western Howard County. I'm like, okay, couldn't find anything under $600,000 for 4-bedroom. I'm like, I'm building my own house. So I built my own house, and I was my own builder because you're allowed to do that as a landowner in Howard County. And it took 8 months. It was over winter. It's my first build. I wish it was a little shorter, but I didn't make any money that year. I mean, I wasn't making, I didn't pay myself to be the GC because it's on my loan. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hire mortgage. It's the sweat equity. That's the whole point. Also, I was selling mortgages part-time. So it's hard to get loans part-time when you're barely doing it, let alone run around chasing contractors. And I really gained a big respect for general contractors or builders, so I was like, okay, it's a job. Like, I don't know if it's worth what they try to make sometimes. I was so anti, like, I'll do everything myself. But it is but that led to like the next year I was reading Art of the Deal. Like, I'm like, man, Trump owned a football team when he was my age. I'm like, I got to get I got to get in the game here.
Well, plus you're a really bad painter.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in houses before, like sanding, like like when I had like 10 properties, like the dust is getting on my contacts and like the contacts flipping. I'm like, do I want to do this? No, no.
in the beginning, I was literally like YouTubing how to snake a toilet and like snaking toilets at a college house in Towson because like, who do you call? Like I owned 3 properties. I had $75 in the bank probably at that time. And like, who are you going to call? Like I had no idea. So it was just me like YouTube, like, oh, I'm not getting it down far enough. Like I got to keep going. Like, I was like, what the fuck? Like, what am I doing with my life that this is like, I was teaching kids were yelling at me and crying all day, and then I would come here and like be playing with shit in some college kid's toilet, and I'm like, God, this is glorious. Like, this is really
I'm gonna be rich.
Yeah. One day, as I'm like stuffing the snake down there. But
I feel like at the beginning, that's what you have to do. You know, you don't have money when we both started, and it's just tough. You know, you get those calls, you call a plumber that you don't know just from the internet, and that's going to cost, $500 for them to go out there, even more sometimes. So sometimes you got to save that money.
It does teach you value though of what this thing, because like you could do one job and you're like, that sucked. And then you hire or go to hire somebody. He's like, oh, I want 1,000. You're like, no way. It's $300. You know already. Cause you're like, I know I could do it for free or $50 with whatever material, but I'll give you this and I'll give you all my work. You have to start dealing in volume with these, the handyman people, like, hey, I'll give you all my stuff if you just don't kill me. And then you got to trust but verify in the beginning.
And I think one of the things that this year and last year where we have really good books like put together, where now I can go to like a cabinet supplier where we use the same people and I love them, and I'm just using this as an example. I can go to another cabinet supplier and be like, hey, look at my sheet. I spent $250,000 last year in cabinets. Like, what is your best price for somebody that spends $250,000 a year in cabinets? And now you have that leverage with those people. You go to a plumber and you're like, hey, I know you don't know me. We've never worked together before, but I did $300,000 in plumbing last year. Like, here it is. Like, what's your best price on a new 3-bed, 2.5 bath or whatever? And I think that, having those numbers together as like investors or contractors is super important in getting the prices where they need to be. So next steps for you guys' company. Are you guys actively trying to scale? Are you happy with where you're at? What's the next steps?
We're always trying to scale. I mean, for R&G, we obviously have like a good system in place with good people, so we're always going to be growing that. Our current next step is a personal sweat equity conversion. I don't know if you really want to talk about that yet, but we're going to be converting something with another partner, and R&G will do the build out, and it'll be like an apartment complex conversion.
We're kind of thinking if we can, obviously, R&G is a company that can do things and make money, but if we can aim it at something where it's an investment, we can make money with it. It's
So
like
doing
a
the
flip.
work for equity, basically.
Yeah, like a flip. Okay, you used it and then you sold it and you made money, like one little thing, boom, it's done.
Yeah.
Or one big thing, hopefully. But we're like, okay, well, maybe we can buy like an office building that can be converted or whatever, and use our people that we already have in place to build some more ownership, in that building, and keep it. So multi-units is the next phase for us.
And then we have a new person coming up to work with us that we're going to kind of branch into like more, what was that term that you used? Like target marketing, I guess, like a Len the plumber or like electrical stuff. And we'll be like people that you can call for that kind of stuff.
Do you guys manage your own rental properties currently?
Yes. I tried a couple management companies and it did not work. I have affordable housing, meaning like they're just basic houses. So when you go to rent it, like if you're a management company and you got all the, you got a bunch of nice rentals and mine are kind of, they're okay, like laminate countertops and oak. And then, they walk in both places, they don't pick my place. So it almost bankrupted me a couple times, and I don't blame them. I just, I had them so long, and it's like, so I realized like you can self-manage. But now I do have like a part-time lady. I pay her per hour. She handles problems. She goes to court. She takes calls. She does that kind of stuff, orders the repair. And I also have a handyman on salary, for, portion of his time, 32 hours a week. And he's just constantly running around doing whatever we need him to do. So I've made it to that point where that's in place. It doesn't mean you can take your eye off it, but it's just the next step, like you get over a hump and then you can like, okay, I don't have to be on the day to day.
What were some of the things that you didn't like about property management companies when you tried to hire them?
Well,
Let me get my notepad out. Hang on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so one time I gave 20 properties to somebody, I'll test them out. And there was like 6 vacants. Maybe, they were ready to rent. Maybe I needed to send a cleaner in here and there. But for 6 months none was rented. And then I was like, okay, I gotta move on. I gotta take him back over or something's funny. And I was building with her, like we were 2 million sales, 3 million. So I was trying to get someone else to handle them so we can build a company together. Right. So that's the issue. I remember one time I let someone go like December 3rd, and within 1 month I had 3 rented. 3 rented that could have been rented 4 months ago. $1,200 rent times 3 times 4 months. That money's just not in my account. That's the way, that's how you look at rentals. Like,
yeah, 1 month of vacancy just crushed your numbers.
Yes, crushed. And we're talking like the whole time, like none were rented. And I'm like, oh man, maybe you start second guessing yourself. And then you walk with the people and you're like, yeah, it's affordable. And they're like, this is great. Cool. And they sign up, but maybe if that property management company had like other houses that are 1,500, they're getting a higher commission to do theirs. So, and I think they were growing. So they were like, oh, you're a little 20. We don't care about, maybe, who knows, so one of the biggest problems with the management stuff is the true profit on rentals is about 20%, right? Well, if you hire someone at 10 or 8%, they're getting half of your money. That's if everything goes well. I mean, that's if everything goes well. So you might as well do it yourself. Get an app. I got an app on my phone. I use Landlord Studio. It's not the best company, but I just did it. I'm sure there's free ones. And when someone makes a payment on Cash App or Zelle or Venmo, I put it in there. They get a receipt on an email. They get a text. It also reminds them to pay. And it's all there. I mean, it's not I don't do any mail anymore. I used to be all mail. And then I'm like, this is crazy. It's 2015 at the time I changed, So, if they don't have the money in the account, file on. You got to file right away. There's a lot of stuff you just got to do. Like, I can go
You could do
into
a whole podcast on just
on being a
property
landlord,
management.
So
I have one more question about scaling, and we have a very similar business, so I want to see if our problems align. So if, let's say, I had a magic door that I could open and say, hey, we can double your revenue this year, double the amount of work you're doing, what would be like the biggest obstacle to get around in order for you guys to double your rev next year? Like, is it personnel? Is it logistics? Like, what do you think would be your number one issue?
Probably personnel.
But I would think it would just be the management side, of the client and also of the crews. I mean, we're keeping an eye on the, last year we did four point something in, volume. So, and then we were like, oh, we're pretty busy. But if that doubled, we would need more project managers.
More of us.
We do have a full-time project manager and a full-time administrative assistant. So we'd probably bring somebody in, maybe, to cover the volume. We'd have to do that.
What would you have to do to double the work, to get double the work that you had the prior year?
That's just marketing, I feel like.
Oh, you mean like what would we have to do to get?
Yeah,
I didn't have
not his magic door. Okay,
I didn't have the magic door.
Probably marketing, meeting more people. I mean, if I had like 100 hours a day to just go on quote appointments, like I'm sure the revenue would come in. But
estimators too for us, because
yeah,
our goal this year was 10 million. We tried. We're not getting to 10, but one of the big things was estimating, and then me getting pulled away from estimating to deal with, like, we have 2 full-time project managers plus us, and I was getting pulled away to deal with like higher level problems, I guess. And then I would be like 5 or 6 estimates deep, where I'd need to then lock myself in a basement for 5 days to get all these estimates out there. And keeping that flow of estimates like coming in and flowing out is really tough when you're also managing projects and managing a business and whatever.
We struggle
else.
with the same thing. I mean, we constantly are like, we got to get this quote out. We got to get this done. And, I type it up and then he prices it and then he sends it to me and then I send it out. And then we got to do the follow up. And then you got to have enough time for that.
I have a new thing that I'm trying out, and you guys I'll check back in a couple of weeks. But so I hired a VA. They start on Monday, and I'm going to be going through my estimates, walkthroughs, with an earbud in, recording or like when I leave, I'll do a voice memo, like, okay, project admins, $5,000 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just going to have him type it, because I'm driving around all day. I'm going to send him this voice memo, and he's going to type up the estimate for him. I made a video like on my computer of how we use Joist to write our estimates. I just went on Joist. I made a video, like a how-to video, and I sent it to him. So now I'm going to try to use him to do the typing.
I used my assistant to do that.
Did it work out?
It worked great.
Yeah, that's the next step, because sometimes I'll go to like 3 estimates, for example, in a day. First of all, they all blend together by the end of the day in your head. So I'm like, was that the one with the bathroom in the basement, or is there some pump? Like, I kind of have to go through these pictures.
So I have
and
great
stuff.
memory. Like, I can remember projects from like 6 years
Really?
ago.
Our notes are really good, and I'm measuring each room.
I just go through. I have pictures now in the Polycam. Now I have a 360 picture, so I can just like scan around the room. But it's still taking my time to sit there. Like, so if I did it right when I left, or even when I was there, if like the client's not there or whatever, I would just be talking through it, and they can be typing, and I won't have to sit there and type it out. It'll cut my time of getting these estimates out. Hopefully.
I do want to hear if you can keep up with that, because the client is there sometimes, and then you're like, for me, if the client was there, I was like, okay, I'll spend 10 minutes in the car driving to the next quote to talk about it, and then people call, and then you don't do it, and then you go to do it later, and for me, talking it is more difficult than like me sitting there and physically typing it. So then it's like, I'm like on the thing recording, and it's, oh shoot, no, go back, don't type that, like erase that, like put this in. And I'll definitely circle back and see how it's working out.
Yeah, I'm going to have, like, Joist is good because you have different line items that is kind of like set. One's project admin, one's plumbing, whatever. So as long as I can like build out the framework and get some words on the thing, then I can go back and like, but right now that's majority of my day is like writing, freaking going to the estimate, meeting them, and then writing it at the end of the day.
It's like, what's your number? What do you want? You know, just tell me. Like,
It's
I'll try to make it work.
that would be, I think, the biggest struggle for us is estimating the amount of jobs that we would need to double the revenue. It's just getting the estimates out on time, finding the people to do the estimates. And I'm always scared. I don't know if you guys ever used an estimator, like a outside subcontracted estimator.
We did one time, the sales guy that we did.
Yeah.
And it was too tight. Like, we were like, okay, sounds good. And then, what did we make?
he
Like
just didn't do well
$100?
at it. And of course, it's not his dime, you know, it's
Right.
ours.
He just takes his 1 or 2 points and that's it.
That's the tricky part. You know, I would say like if investors wanted to know how to get their quote faster, write their own scope.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes,
they don't
I ask
understand
you that
this
all the time. Do you have a scope? They're like, no, that's why I'm bringing
Like,
you.
like,
I'm
you mean like a camera? Like,
Do you ever do like virtual quote appointments? Like where maybe they don't live locally and they just want you to go and look at it. Do you ever do those?
So like an investor that would like live in California and have the property. Yeah, I mean, I'll go there and if they own it and yeah, I'll go there and I'll like FaceTime them or whatever and be like, this is broken. This is bad.
Yeah. So we do that, but now because we were never getting like we realized if we're not meeting them in person, like we usually don't get the job. So now we make them type a scope, something. Even if it's like kitchen, this is what I want to do, like some kind of investment that shows me, okay, you're actually serious about something. So
that's like you said, typing it up. That's a lot of, I mean,
that's
you
a
got
lot
to
of
put in
time.
your own words, of course, to make the quote, but
Right.
like it needs to be written. So then the number's tied to the writing. And then they can look at it and like, oh no, you're missing something, or take this out. Then the number can change, as opposed to an investor going, I told you when we walked this 4 months ago, I wanted whatever, you know, marble countertops. And they're like, okay, well, it's not in the contract.
That's one thing, like as contractors, I would suggest to all the consumers, like read the fucking contracts.
Read
like,
the scope.
Read it. Like you have to read the contracts. You have to read the scope, because at the end of this project, when I put in 36 cabinets and you were expecting 42, it's like, it says 36, you just didn't read it.
Yep.
Or it says that we were doing, you know, brushed nickel and you wanted black. Like that's going to be more money. We put brushed nickel in there. Read the contracts and have a contract first. I guess first.
Yes.
Have one.
Have
Yes,
one,
have
read
one.
it. And, you know, keep in mind, like general contractors make money by hiring subcontractors. You know, yeah, there might be in-house or there might be outside people, but we're using the scopes
to give to them.
To give to them, and they're giving us a price, and we're hoping we put a little on top, so at the end we make a little bit of money. So at the end we're not like, oh, we got you on those 36s, you know,
Right.
like that was from the get-go. You know,
We made an extra $250 by
Right.
not doing 42.
your price would have been higher with that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like, you know, we're not trying to get over. You know, you need to read what we're doing. Like, you know, it's like, yeah. So
It's like tile. You want herringbone? Okay, it costs more.
It costs more.
More
Yeah.
labor and more material.
Yeah,
So
or they like I put in every one of my backsplashes is a white 3x6 subway tile. That's like standard. If you want 3x12, sure, but it's gonna cost more. And then like, okay, well, can I get back to you on the tile? I'm like, sure, but then it's an open-ended price because you're gonna bring me some glass subway tile from the tile shop that I need to use special mortar, special the saws. I got to get all this stuff. Like, I want to know exactly what you're going to put in, and then I'll give you your price. Like the bait and switch, I've had that done a number of times where they bring in this like super fancy marble. It's like $75 a square foot. And I'm like, okay, yeah, the price just tripled for labor. Like,
Yep.
They're like, well, it's the same thing. I'm like, not the same
we
thing.
have all that written out as well. Now we have like, you know, our tile guy charges extra for black grout because it's a freaking pain in the butt. And so now there's a clause in there. Now we have like tile patterns printed in our contract. Like, you're getting the standard pattern. Any of these basket weaves or this or that, like, it's going to cost extra. It's you know, every project that something goes wrong, we're like, oh, new clause in our contract.
Yeah.
New disclosure.
It's constant. We talked, and I'm not going to blow anybody's spot up, but we talked at that event the other day where I got really screwed by this. And the contract was okay, but we learned that it wasn't best. It was good enough to get my money back, but we lost and were owed 6 figures, almost multiple 6 figures on a project that we both actually bid on, ironically, and the client just didn't pay. And it took a year to get that money back. And a lot of the issue was there was just like he said, she said, because the contract was not as good as it could be. Since then, things have changed dramatically in contract writing because I was like, that could have easily bankrupted us at that time. And like somehow we pulled it out of our ass that we were able to survive, but it was close.
Yeah. My contract, since we've partnered up, went from me finding something on the internet to a lawyer on retainer.
Mhm.
Hey, add this disclosure. Hey, add this. This just happened on this project. So, yeah.
Well, Nick, you have anything else for Ryan and Charlie?
So if you guys are doing contracting, make sure you do contracts. I don't do much of contracting. With contracts, I do work for my own properties. But I do want to talk just lastly about, I know you guys said you guys wanted to start buying some buildings and converting them into apartments and even just buying apartments in general. Is there like a number goal that you guys want to get to, whether it's a unit count goal or like a monthly cash flow goal?
Wasn't it
1,000 is like a kind of our 1,000 units to own, like,
within like a year?
as fast as we can,
Yeah.
So that's the goal. I mean, when you get into the multi-units, then you're really getting to where those gurus are talking like, no, you don't have to work, because your new job becomes managing your money, managing your assets. That is the job. So, but when you have three, you're like staring at three properties. It's not a lot of revenue to pay you to manage those assets, right? That's the whole point. And it goes to that the business model of serving more people. If you serve more, you're going to make more. Walmart, Wally made a ton of money because he served more people, not because like the product is super great. So if we can get in multi-units and serving 1,000 tenants as opposed to the 50 I have and the 7 we have, whatever, we're gonna be rewarded with a better lifestyle and money. And then
That's a volume play too, right?
Volume play.
It's a smaller margin, but a higher volume.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's one thing that has scared me is the multifamilies. Like I know like I want to do it, but it's like the 5-year rate turn and like if I had bought 5 years ago a big multifamily, I would be screwed right now. Like,
Oh, yeah.
they'd be asking me for a lot of money to come to the table with.
I just had that happen with that. I mentioned I had a 1031 exchange, and I've been in Maryland my whole life. I go to Ocean City. That's where I go. So I'm like, I'm just going to get a place down there because I had to sell 6 of my rentals because the bank that had them decided they didn't want to be in the rental business anymore. And it hit the 5-year hit in COVID. They gave me another year. And then like the vice president sat me down. He's like, you need to sell these or refi them, get rid of them, or we're going to foreclose on you. I'm like, okay, I'm selling them. Because of COVID, my credit was destroyed at the time. They're going to fix it, the CARES Act, all that junk. But I'm like, okay, I guess I'm selling them. So I sold them, and then I realized, okay, if I sell 4 more, that could be a down payment on something else. And you need to keep a good accountant and talk to them, because I just happened to call my accountant and say, if I sold these 6, what is my tax obligation? And I own I own them for like 17 years. Okay. One of them, just to give you an example, just to scare you guys out there, right? One of them was going to at the table, I was going to clear like 10 grand. The gains were going to be 70. So 70, I mean, if your tax bracket's 35 or just say it's 50, it's $35,000 I would have had to pay in taxes on, or say 25%, whatever, on the 10 grand I walk with. I'm like, I guess I'm going to do an exchange now. So it just leads you down a path, but you got to know knowledge is power. You got to know this stuff.
Yeah, hire the professionals that know what they're talking about.
Yes, don't be too cheap.
Tax strategists.
I always use
like
realtors.
it's a real thing.
I let realtors make their money because they're the salesman of the property. I say, what do you want to put it? Like, what's going? Like, what do you need me to do to this house? I know what I'm going to do to it, but I want them to tell me. So I have their input. Don't think for your, use your experts, use your team. Not you.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks a lot for coming out. I know you guys have responsibilities, kids to get to and things like that. It's middle of the day here. I'm sure we all have 75 text messages to get to. So we appreciate your time and coming all the way out from Howard County, and we'll be seeing each other more.
Yeah. Thanks for
Great.
having us.
Thanks
All
for
right, guys,
coming.
like and subscribe. See you next time.